The snow was falling sideways, like it had a grudge. Out where the canyon winds cut across the open flats, a man staggered through the white with blood on his coat and ice in his beard. His boots left no clear trail, just a smeared suggestion that something had passed this way, hunted or dying or both. Behind him, the thunder of hooves echoed off the frozen ridges. He knew they weren't far. The Serpent Gang didn't let blood debts go unpaid. He'd taken 2 of theirs in a border town shootout 3 nights back. Never meant to, but meaning didn't stop bullets. His breath came ragged. The wound in his side had crusted over with cold, but every step threatened to split it back open. A pistol dangled in one gloved hand, more symbolic than useful now. He was too tired to run and too stubborn to fall. The wind howled like it knew his name and wanted it gone. Lights. He blinked, uncertain if what he saw through the swirling white was real. But the cabin didn't vanish. Smoke rose from its crooked chimney, and a faint orange glow flickered behind frostbitten windows. He limped toward it, knees nearly buckling. He collapsed against the porch post, the wood creaking under his weight. The door didn't open right away. It stayed closed long enough for the cold to remind him how near death waited. Then hinges groaned, and a shotgun muzzle appeared first, steady, unwavering. Behind it, a woman's eyes. Gray, unreadable. "What are you?" she asked. He tried to speak, but his tongue was stiff with cold. He lifted his hand, dropped the pistol into the snow. "Don't want trouble," he rasped. "Wrong country, then," she said, but lowered the gun. She stepped out barefoot, in a worn wool dress and a thick shawl, unfazed by the cold. Her hands were firm as she dragged him inside. The door shut with a thump that sealed out the storm, and sealed in whatever came next. The warmth was immediate but unfriendly, like a fire kept not for comfort but necessity. The cabin was sparse, 1 bed, a table, a stove working hard to earn its keep. She eased him onto a chair. He sagged, wheezing. "You got a name?" she asked, pulling his coat aside. "Cole." She gave a tight nod. "I'm Mabel." He said nothing. His eyes followed her as she fetched a basin, boiled water, and returned with cloth and a tin of some foul-smelling paste. "You gonna die on me?" she asked as she cleaned the blood. "Not if I can help it." "Well," she said, "we'll find out, won't we?" He flinched as she pressed the cloth against his ribs. Her touch was quick, unflinching. She'd done this before, he guessed. Not recently, but long enough to remember what mattered. "You bring them here?" she asked, not looking up. "I tried not to." "You fail a lot." He almost smiled. "Just today." She wrapped the wound, tight and neat. When she stood, she studied him as though trying to see past his skin. Then she turned and poured coffee, the silence between them filled only by the crackle of the stove. "You'll need to stay off your feet for a bit," she said, "but not too long. If they're after you, they'll be here come sunrise." "Why help me?" he asked. "I don't recall saying I was," she said, setting the coffee down in front of him. "But I got a porch, and you fell on it. Seemed like the decent thing." Cole took the cup with shaking hands. It burned his tongue and throat, but sent a flicker of life through his limbs. He looked around. No signs of anyone else. "You live out here alone." "Don't most women, once men make enough mess of things?" He met her eyes. "I didn't mean." "Doesn't matter what you meant," she said flatly. They didn't speak for a while. She moved with quiet purpose, checking the lock on the door, adding wood to the stove, unrolling a spare blanket near the hearth. "You'll sleep there," she said. "Keep your blood off my sheets." Cole nodded. The pain in his side dulled, but the weight of something else settled heavier, the kind of tired that came not from wounds, but from years of running from the kind of man he'd once been. Sometime before dawn, he woke to the sound of hooves. Faint, distant. Mabel stood by the window, shotgun in hand. "Company," she said. He struggled upright. She didn't offer to help. Instead, she crossed to the door and opened it a crack. Snow blew in, clinging to the hem of her dress. "Stay down," she ordered. He watched as 3 riders came into view, dark shapes in a world of white. One rode forward, a smirk on his face and a 6-shooter twirling around a gloved finger. "Morning, ma'am," he called. "You seen a man come through here? Hurt, maybe." bleeding. Might have knocked on your door. I haven't seen much of anything through the storm, she replied, calm as a sunrise. And I don't make a habit of opening my door to strangers. The outlaw leaned in his saddle. Wouldn't want to poke around where we ain't welcome, but we're mighty set on finding him. You check the East Ridge? She asked, shifting the gun in her arms. Snow's softer that way. Easier for blood to vanish. The rider studied her, smile fading just a bit. You sure? I'd be surer if you took your boots off my property, she said. He stared another beat, then tipped his hat. Ma'am. The gang turned. The snow swallowed them. Mabel shut the door slowly. Then she turned to Cole, who hadn't moved from the floor. I reckon they'll be back. Cole nodded. I reckon they will. She took her seat by the stove again and reached for a battered tin of tobacco. Well then, she said, striking a match. You've got until they do to tell me who you really are, and why the hell I shouldn't let him have you. And for the first time since he'd fallen on her porch, Cole looked afraid, not of death, but of the truth. The storm didn't stop. It crawled over the land like a siege, slow, relentless, burying the world in white. Days passed inside the cabin, thick with silence broken only by the groan of settling wood or the hiss of logs catching fire. Cole slept in fits, waking to pain and half-remembered dreams. Each time, Mabel was nearby, moving with the quiet purpose of someone used to waiting out hard things. She didn't ask much, but when she did, the questions came like hammer strikes. Precise, heavy, meant to test the shape of what lay beneath. You ever kill a man you didn't mean to? She asked one evening, while pouring stew into chip bowls. Cole didn't look up. I've killed men. Meaning's hard to measure after the fact. She accepted that. No more, no less. By the third day, he could walk without leaning on the table. He took to mending what he could, tightening hinges, resetting traps near the shed, chopping what little dry would remain under the eaves. His hands knew the work. Mabel watched with interest, but not surprise. You're no ranch hand, she said. He didn't argue, didn't confirm either. She was a woman of few indulgences, but discipline didn't mean detachment. In the late hours, with snow piled to the windowsills and wind clawing at the roof, she told him how her husband had died. They dragged him off the land, she said, her voice even, eyes on the fire. Said he owed them protection money. He stood his ground. Figured the law would follow. Cole said nothing. He knew better than to ask if it had. They left him hanging from a cedar tree east of town. No trial, just a note pinned to his shirt. Loyalty isn't free. She spoke it like scripture, memorized in bitterness. The Serpent Gang? Cole asked. Mabel gave a slow nod. Eli Duggan and his filth. They still ride. Oh, they ride, she said. Less bold in towns now. But out here, where the snow eats the bodies and no one's watching, they do as they please. That night, Cole sat alone at the table, fingering the grip of his revolver. The pain in his side throbbed, but it wasn't the wound that kept him awake. It was the truth behind Mabel's calm. She wasn't afraid, not of outlaws, not of him. And it wasn't madness. It was something harder, purpose born of grief. The next morning brought a new kind of sound. A sharp knock. 3 times. Mabel answered it with her shotgun in hand. At the door stood a boy, no older than 12, wrapped in a too-large coat, and with fear dancing in his eyes. Miss Whitlock, he said breathlessly. Pa says they're back. Camp by the ridge. 4 riders, maybe 5. Saw their firelight last night. Mabel didn't blink. How far? Half a mile, maybe less. Tell your pa to stay in. Lock the barn and don't open to strangers. The boy nodded and turned, vanishing into the snow. She shut the door and turned to Cole. They're circling, she said. Don't think your lie bought us much time. I figured it wouldn't, Cole said. I can be gone before nightfall. You won't make it. Not in your shape. Then you run too. She snorted. I don't run. Not anymore. Cole walked to the window, pulling aside the curtain. The storm had softened, but the sky was gray, heavy with more to come. You don't have to stand with me, he said. I know. You could still send me out. Tell them I forced you to help. Wouldn't matter. I lied once. That's enough for them. He turned toward her. Then we hold here. I've done worse things with a Sunday, she said. They spent the day readying the land. Mabel showed him the shed, half collapsed but dry inside. They loaded it with kindling, just in case the cabin fell or was taken. She uncovered a long crate buried beneath flour sacks. Inside lay a Henry rifle, oiled and loaded. You said your husband. He never touched it, she said. It was mine. Before the wedding. She didn't elaborate. But later, in the yard, Cole watched her take down a row of bottles, with 6 steady shots. No wasted motion. No miss. You were military? He asked. No, she replied. Circus. Trick shooter. 5 years under canvas before I married for quiet. He smiled. It was the first true expression on his face since she'd met him. That quiet sure didn't last, he said. No, she agreed. But I kept the aim. As dusk crept in, they set their defenses. Cole reset traps near the fence line, dug shallow divots to catch hooves or boots. Mabel laid powder under the window ledges, ready to throw fire if they tried to burn them out. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Over a thin supper, they sat in silence. The tension in the air was coiled tight. Outside, the storm had stilled, the sky a frozen bruise overhead. After all this, Cole said, what will you do? If I'm alive, she asked. He nodded. Wake up. Feed the hens. Shoot any man who makes me regret not dying tonight. He chuckled, but her face stayed firm. There was no room left in her for hope, only resolve. Before she turned in, she paused by the door, watching the darkness. They'll come before dawn, she said. They always do. Fear likes the dark. Cole rose and checked his revolver one more time. Then we'll greet them with daylight, he said. Mabel gave a nod, her expression unreadable. Then she walked to the hearth, stirred the embers, and sat in her chair like a queen on a throne no army dared challenge. The night deepened. The snow held its breath. And somewhere out in the white, the guns waited. Cole didn't sleep. He sat near the fire, the revolver across his knees, his back warmed by the flames and his mind drifting somewhere colder. Mabel was asleep in the rocking chair, arms folded, the shotgun still upright beside her. Even in rest, she looked ready, like a coil of barbed wire wrapped in wool and patience. Outside, the silence was no longer peaceful. It had turned watchful, as if the land itself knew violence was about to scratch across its frozen skin. The cabin creaked as if straining to hold in more than just 2 lives. Cole listened to every sound, branches sighing under snow, the faint pop of the stove, the shifting of logs. He remembered other nights like this. Different roofs, different wars. His thumb rubbed a notch on a revolver's handle, one of many. He didn't cut those marks to keep count. He carved them when he couldn't sleep. Each one a memory blurred by time, but edged by guilt. The men he killed hadn't all deserved it. Not then, maybe not ever. He had ridden with a company once, out west, after the war. Hired guns in gray coats who took contracts under official-sounding names. They called themselves regulators, law by other means. They told small ranchers they were keeping peace, protecting investments. But when the land was cleared and the title signed over to someone richer, Cole had looked down at bloodied hands and realized he'd become the very man he once swore to fight. He left them under a winter moon, with nothing but his pistol, a saddlebags of regrets, and a promise to never take coin for another man's suffering. That was 5 years ago. Since then, he drifted. Saloon brawler, trail cook, ghost with a sidearm. He hadn't planned to be in Carter's Crossing when Duggan's men walked in, loud and laughing. He hadn't planned to interfere. But when they knocked the old sheriff to the ground and put their boots on his badge, something in Cole refused to stay seated. He drew before thinking. 2 men dropped. The third winged him as he ran. He hadn't looked back. Now he was back in another war. Not one of flags or ranch lines, but something smaller and fiercer. Survival drawn in the snow, carved into wood grain and bone. And Mabel, with her past sharpened into readiness, was part of it now. Dawn began its slow crawl behind a ridgeline, a pale silver brushing the horizon. The cold had teeth, biting even through walls. Mabel stirred and opened her eyes without surprise. They're coming, Cole said. She stood, stretching. How many? Can't say. But they'll come sure and quiet. She nodded. You take the loft window. Gives you range. He didn't argue. They'd already gone over the layout the night before. She covered the door and the front yard. He would take the back, the ridgeline approach, the blind spot. Upstairs, he crouched behind a trunk, eyes scanning the white hush. There was nothing yet, just snow and pine and the brittle blue of morning light. But he knew better than to trust stillness. Then movement. Two shapes. One flanked wide, using the shed for cover. The other ducked low and crept along the fence. Cole exhaled slow and let his aim settle. He waited for a heartbeat, too. The first man slipped into range. Cole squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked across the land like a split tree. The man folded. The other ran, disappearing behind the woodshed. Below, Mabel fired. Then another shout, followed by a scream. Cole dropped the second man as he broke for the back window, firing wildly. Another rider came from the east, galloping hard, rifle raised. Mabel caught him with a shot to the chest before he cleared the porch. He tumbled from the saddle and hit the snow with a muffled thump. Then it went quiet. Cole stayed still, eyes sharp. He knew the silence that came after the first kill. It wasn't safety. It was calculation. Someone was waiting for a mistake. From behind a tree near the ravine, a voice called out, "Cole Braith." The name hit him like a slap. Mabel glanced up at the loft, her expression unreadable. "Come out," the voice continued. "Ain't nowhere left to run. You left us in a bad way, partner. But Duggan's forgiving. He just wants to talk." Cole leaned out slightly, just enough to see. Eli Duggan stood in a black coat, smiling with all his teeth showing. He held no gun, but 4 others waited behind him. Cole called down, "You talk with corpses now, Eli." "You got nerve," Duggan said, "running off like you did, leaving us to answer for your conscience. You answered with murder. We answered with money. That's how the world works. You knew that." "I forgot," Cole said. "Then I remembered." Duggan's smile vanished. "You gonna die for some farm widow? That it?" Cole looked at Mabel. She hadn't moved. Her shotgun stayed trained, her eyes steady. "She gave me a place to fall," Cole said. "That's more than you ever did." Duggan spat into the snow. "Then fall for good." He raised his hand. Gunfire erupted. Cole ducked back as bullets cracked against the window frame. Down below, Mabel rolled out the door's path and fired twice, dropping 1 man. The rest scattered. Cole fired from above, grazing another. The man yelped and stumbled back behind a stump. The shootout lasted minutes that felt like lifetimes. Then suddenly, the last outlaw broke cover and ran. Duggan turned, cursed, and followed. Cole aimed but hesitated, not out of mercy, but to see if Mabel would take the shot. She did. Duggan pitched forward into the snow, blood blooming behind him. The land went quiet. Cole lowered the pistol. Inside, smoke curled from a stove. The fire still lived. Mabel stepped back inside, cheeks flushed from cold and fury. "You kill him?" Cole asked. She nodded. He stared at her, at the woman in a wool dress with shotgun soot on her hands and no tremor in her breath. "You didn't hesitate." "I did," she said. "Last night." Cole sank onto the steps, exhaustion washing over him. The war he'd tried to leave had found him. But this time he hadn't run. And he wasn't alone. Snowflakes drifted like ash over the blood-streaked yard. The porch boards creaked under Cole's boots as he stepped outside, revolver limp at his side, smoke still curling faintly from the barrel. The sky had shed its night cloak, revealing a dawn not clean or warm, but raw, tinted gray and red and veined with scars of gunfire. Mabel stood over Duggan's body, the shotgun tucked into the crook of her arm. Her coat flared in the wind, a silent banner of what she'd survived. She didn't speak as Cole approached, only shifted her eyes toward him and then back to the corpse. "I never asked for this," she said quietly. Cole looked down at Duggan's still face. The man's eyes were wide open, as if frozen in the moment he realized the woman he underestimated had pulled the trigger. "I know," Cole replied, "but you met it head-on. Most wouldn't." Mabel exhaled slowly, her breath white in the morning air. You think they'll send more? Could be, he said. Duggan was the loudest, but not the only one with reach. She nodded, then bent and took Duggan's revolver, checking its chamber with a practiced flick. Then we prepare. Cole stared at her hands, steady, sure. A woman who once kept a home, now keeping the line between safety and ruin with iron and instinct. They dragged the bodies beyond the tree-line. Cole offered to do it alone, but Mabel joined him without a word. The blood soaked into the snow, thick and unforgiving, turning the white fields a coppered brown. When they were done, they cleaned their weapons by the pump, not speaking until the water ran clear. Inside the cabin, the fire had dimmed, but not died. Mabel stoked it with slow, deliberate movements. The silence between them was not empty. It was full, like the hush after a storm when everything broken is counted, and everything left standing feels borrowed. Cole sat at the table and pulled off his coat. His side throbbed where a bullet had grazed him, but he hadn't noticed it until now. Mabel fetched a cloth and knelt beside him without asking. She worked the wound clean, her hands gentle and unflinching. You have a name for where you're headed? She asked as she wrapped the cloth around him. No, he said, but I think it's further from who I was. She tied the knot tight and sat back on her heels. You're not the man they were chasing, Cole. I am, he said softly, but I'm also the one who stood his ground beside a stranger. Mabel rose and poured 2 cups of coffee. It was burnt and thick, but it tasted like warmth. She slid one across the table to him. You've got a place here if you want it, she said. He blinked. That an offer? She looked him square in the eye. It's not charity. I didn't think it was. They drank in silence for a while. The storm had stopped. The light outside was changing sharper, cutting across the land like a blade honing what remained. Chickens began to stir in their coop. The world hadn't ended. It had simply shed another layer of peace. Later, Cole stepped back onto the porch. He leaned against the railing, watching the smoke rise from the chimney. His fingers brushed the scar along his side, fresh but shallow. A reminder that he wasn't untouchable, but maybe he was finally becoming something better than that. Mabel joined him, arms crossed. She stared at the horizon where the trees met the morning light. You see that ridge? She asked. Yeah, that's where my husband was buried. First winter here. We'd only just built the roof. Cole nodded, respectful. You stayed after? I stayed because something had to, she said. This land don't remember the easy days. Only the ones you fight for. He turned toward her, really seeing her now. Not just the woman who'd taken him in, not the widow with a loaded gun, but someone forged in the same fire he'd barely crawled out of. A different war, a different uniform, same scars. I can help fix the barn, he offered, and keep watch till spring. She smiled faintly, almost imperceptible. Spring's far off. Gives us time then. They stood together as the light grew bolder, chasing away what shadows remained. The porch still bore the tracks of boots, blood, and violence. But for the first time in years, Cole felt the weight in his chest shift, not vanish, not lift entirely, but change shape, like a burden finally shared. Behind them, the cabin waited, still standing, still warm, and for once, so were they.